Living through the COVID-19 pandemic, we have seen the loss of over 100,000 American lives. Fortunately, the government immediately funded research for a vaccine, saving the lives of millions. The HIV and AIDS pandemic was a different story, killing more than 700,000 Americans since 1981. The AIDS epidemic began in the early 1980s, commonly called the gay plague. Our government did little to address the epidemic, mainly because HIV and AIDS was primarily affecting gay men, transgender women, intravenous drug users, immigrants, and racial minorities. HIV was a death sentence. Nobody knew how it was spread, and even nurses were afraid to go near AIDS patients. LGBTQ people with AIDS were denied health care, while the American public refused to acknowledge the epidemic. President Ronald Reagan stayed silent for years before even publicly mentioning AIDS in 1985, after roughly 12,000 Americans had already died of the disease. It wasn't until research found that HIV and AIDS was also affecting heterosexual people in the late 80s when policies finally began to shift. Even then, new HIV treatments were only available to those who could afford it, leaving marginalized poor communities helpless. During the peak of the AIDS crisis around the late 80s, same-sex couples were more hated than ever before in history. Religious organizations pushed anti-gay propaganda, saying that the disease was God's punishment to gay people for their sinful lifestyle. The majority of the public believed that HIV and AIDS victims deserved to die because of their lifestyle and treated them that way. By 1987, activists founded the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, or ACT UP, in New York City, frustrated by government inaction as the bodies of their loved ones continued to pile up. Today, their actions and protests are legendary for accelerating the government's response to the AIDS crisis, allowing quicker testing and treatment of life-saving experimental drugs, and drawing public attention to the deadly impact of homophobic public health policies. After years of research, there is still no cure for AIDS, but there are a variety of effective treatments for HIV and AIDS that have made the diagnosis significantly less dire than it was when the epidemic began. Today, there are medicines available to prevent HIV, as well as treatments that can make the virus undetectable to a test, which also means untransmittable to sexual partners. As a young gay man living in 21st century America, I am extremely privileged to live in a time where HIV and AIDS is no longer a death sentence. Gay marriage is legal in all 50 states, and LGBTQ rights are more advanced than ever. However, there is still a massive stigma surrounding people that are living with HIV. Even in the gay community, I've heard horrible things said about people that are HIV positive. Some are still afraid to have them as sexual partners, even though the virus can be untransmittable with treatment. As recommended for gay men, I get tested for STDs every 3 months. Every single time I await my HIV results, I get overwhelmingly anxious that I might test positive. To this day, I've also never been able to donate blood due to the stigma around HIV. It is still illegal for gay men to donate blood because of the possibility of HIV in their system. Growing up gay was very difficult for me. I was raised Mormon and taught that being gay is a sin, and bullied all throughout middle school for being too flamboyant. When I was 18, I went to my first gay club in Uptown Dallas. I was out to most of my friends and family, but it was a huge culture shock. I remember being so amazed that there was a thrift store across the street called Out of the Closet. There were rainbow flags everywhere, drag queens, and a room full of gay men dancing to Lady Gaga. I had never felt so seen, so understood, and for the first time, I was actually proud of my sexuality, something I was ashamed of growing up. Since then, I've become a drag queen and work frequently at gay bars across Texas. These gay bars are safe spaces for LGBTQ people to be themselves, but it wasn't always that way. Around the late 1960s, gay bars were opening in big cities across America, but were frequently raided by police because being gay was still illegal in 49 states. The most relevant was the Stonewall Inn in New York City, where in 1969, its patrons decided to fight back against police harassment. The infamous Stonewall riots sparked the gay rights movement, with Black transgender woman Marsha P. Johnson being one of the first to fight back for equality. Drag queens and transgender women were easy visible targets for the police. I can only imagine how it felt to walk in their shoes during this era. Thanks to the bravery and sacrifice of these LGBTQ trailblazers, gay bars are now safe spaces for a community that is still looked down upon and outcast from society. The drag community specifically provided me with a loving support system, something we gays like to call chosen family. I have been mentored by many older drag legends that have lived through the AIDS crisis and lost so many loved ones to the virus. Hearing their stories has helped me understand the history of our community and how our culture came to be. Their experiences inspire me to always fight for my rights, respect my elders, and to take my sexual health seriously. Gay culture is a huge part of who I am, how I act, how I dress, what I do, and I'm so grateful to the generations that fought tirelessly for equality in the face of horrible injustice and the devastating AIDS crisis. There is an entire generation of LGBTQ voices gone that could have had a tremendous impact on our society, and my generation has a responsibility to continue the legacy that they left behind.